Hey guys, welcome to another episode of RevOps Alignment and with ABM. Today we have Anna Nadeina, who is head of growth at SaaS.group. She will tell us more about SaaS.group, but as the name suggests, group of SaaS companies. So Anna knows a bunch about what's happening in the market today and what are these all these SaaS companies struggling with. What are the actual go-to markets? What they hire? What they look at in hiring? So we will have a very good discussion about what these SaaS products and the actual companies in the portfolios what they aim for, so we can learn from that. But before we jump into that, uh, let's get to know first our guest. Actually, she was a chef, if you can imagine that. Hey, Anna, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for the intro. First of all, it's really interesting to see how Riverside looks on the other side. I'm usually on the host side. It's a lot more buttons there. So, but yeah, excited to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So, how one becomes head of growth, not for one, but for a bunch of SaaS companies. So, SaaS group, let's say, um, because it's I think it must be confusing, right? Because you have so many personas, you might have so many different go-to markets. Somebody's enterprise, someone is PLG. So how you are handling all this different
I'm afraid,
communication coming?
I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you right here, because I'm not doing growth for all the companies. First of all, it's not possible because all the companies that we buy, they stay independent, right? We acquire these beautiful products, beautiful brands with teams, hopefully with their founders. And there is no one head of growth just like telling them what to do and where to go. No, my job is in a way a lot more easier because I do growth
Mm-hmm.
for SaaS Group itself. So basically, I'm the person that makes sure that whenever any B2B SaaS company that's in our range $2 to $10 million in ARR, that has a horizontal product thinks about an exit, we're the company they're thinking about.
Mm-hmm. But you're still interacting with these companies, right? So
Absolutely, yeah.
can you explain us a bit, because it's a interesting role, like not so many people have this role, how this
Yeah,
interaction goes, or what is this role about, because a group is
sure.
different than one company.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay, a little more about SaaS Group, right? Just to give the context. SaaS
Yeah.
Group is, yes, now a group of SaaS companies. We're a holding, basically. We buy, like I said, wonderful, smaller in a way that, PE companies are not that interested, maybe, in those
Mm-hmm.
companies. So they're between $2 and $10 million in annual
Mm-hmm.
recurring revenue, horizontal product, B2B SaaS. Um, and yeah, like you said, mostly POG. We try to work with companies where we actually know what we're doing, where we can add value. And yeah, we acquire to hold them, to grow them, to take them to the next level. Like I said, we're very founder friendly, so we would like founders to stay with us. I mean, it's a great advantage for us to have the person behind the product staying with us after the acquisition. Team friendly as well. We like to retain the teams whenever it's possible. We're fully remote at the same moment. So, we have people from,
That's
I
neat.
think it's 35 countries at the moment. Yes. And yeah, I mean, the way we work with them, and like to your point with interaction, um, as I mentioned already, we keep the companies independent. So everything, regarding tech and product, they decide where they want to go, where they want to
Mm-hmm.
experiment, because they got to the point where, they were successful enough to get us interested. They were successful enough to get to a certain point in their growth, so we trust them to grow further. We do
Mm-hmm.
centralize a few parts, like mostly parts that founders are not so excited about, like finance, HR. So, if you
Mm.
need to hire somebody, let us do it. I mean, we have incredible HR department that does magic, hiring really, really good people. Um,
Mm.
but what we encourage is knowledge sharing. So any challenge, any struggle brand has, we are all in one Slack. You can come to the next
Mm.
CEO, to the founding member, to me, to the central team, where we have, marketers and growth and SEO professionals, whatever you need, and just talk to them. Share
Mm.
what you need, and we also have like internal webinars and whatnot. So like it's a lot about just um, supporting brands with their expertise, knowledge, experience.
So how I see it is like a tribe, like that has different families, and their family and what they do in the family is their job, but you share resources. So if you need to go, let's say, hunting or whatever, the families
Yes,
would unite, and they would go together.
we'll
Okay,
support
got
you.
it.
Yes.
That's Yeah, they will support each other. Okay, and other than this, you also run a podcast, which I see that you have like 48 episodes already. So we can
It's
squeeze out also some insights
160
that you
actually.
learned. Ooh, 160.
Yeah.
Then you need to update the website because it's 48 here.
Oh, it's
Cool. So
48
that,
for the third season. One season, 50
oh,
episodes.
wow.
So
So even
yeah,
more, even more.
even more.
Great. So we have amazing guests, guys. We have insights from what this SaaS group and how they operate, but also we have the insights from a 188, you said, uh, podcast
Almost.
episodes. So that's nice. Cool. So you went from marketing roles into the SaaS group. I just want to understand, before you worked for other companies, what's different in a company like a SaaS group where you have a group of SaaS companies? I'm more interested. I know that you need to talk nicely all the time about the current employer, but besides that, what's like super different when you have a group of companies versus what you had before?
Good question. So honestly, and it's just something I realized fairly recently. I always worked in startup environment, and like always had very, very small teams. So there was a ton of freedom in every role that I had. I don't know. I was super
Mm-hmm.
lucky this way. And I had a bit of a concern, obviously, like you said, coming to a holding that is growing. We're now closer to $70 million in ARR. So it's like the stakes are higher. Obviously, there are a
Mm.
lot more stakeholders, and the experience that everyone has. You have to account for that. But the way SaaS Group works, um, so the brands are kept independent, right? And SaaS Group also lives independently, right? So I'm basically just one woman show that does growth for SaaS Group. Again, I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of freedom to experiment, to see where we want to go. If we want to have a podcast, let's do a podcast. Then we added internal webinars, external live webinars with awesome SaaS professionals joining us to talk a little deeper about like certain SaaS challenges that founders have, because yeah, we talk a lot with different people who come to us for an acquisition or just to, to get an advice or something. And we have a lot of questions from them, and like we see a lot of challenges that now founders have, and we want to uh, we had a conversation with our head of M&A recently, and he said something that I thought was just an incredible description of what we're building. So with SaaS Group, we want to become this lifestyle brand, not really an
Mm-hmm.
acquirer brand, but a brand that SaaS founders know as someone who adds value, someone who you can come to for advice, someone who has amazing expertise, and someone who can help you one way or another to get your product to the next level. And
Mm.
I think that that's exactly what we're doing. And for me, it's such a fascinating role because there are so many things that you can do. We started doing events. We started, going to podcasts more. We started sponsoring newsletters where, there are great communities behind them. So it's a lot of experimentation. So I wouldn't say it's that much different to what I used to be doing, but
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate differentiator, I think, is just having is kind of still operating in that startup-y, like entrepreneurial mode, but knowing
Mm-hmm.
that behind you there is this umbrella of amazing knowledge and experience and support that you can dive into.
Mm. And in the company, you have how many? Like 20 different
I think
SaaS
we're at
companies?
22.
22. Okay, got it. So usually your KPI would be in a like nutshell, like a it would be how many people fill in these forms to get acquired, basically, or how much interest comes from other SaaS companies saying, "Hey, we want to join your family or your tribe." That's
Okay,
like ultimate goal, right?
this is going to sound super weird, maybe in a way, for a company that's already at this stage. But I don't have KPIs. I basically
Mm,
don't track anything. My KPI is just, coming up to a potential guest of the podcast and having them say, "Oh yeah, I've been listening to the podcast for a while." And our target group for the podcast is only B2B SaaS founders that are potentially in our pipeline. So if they already know what we're doing and they know what SaaS Group is, and they are happy to go to our events, like we just announced that we're doing this dinner at B2B Rocks in Paris, and we announced it on I think it's ParisSauceWeek.com. That's the website, I think.
mm-hmm,
Could be mistaken, but yeah, we got so much inbound interest. It's crazy, and
mm-hmm,
I never knew that people know us this much, like in French sauce community. So
mm-hmm.
that's my customer success score.
So yeah, so that's an indication that you do a good job, right? Like the fact
Yes.
that you do an event and people show up, which
Yeah.
I understand that these, KPIs in all this dark social, it's kind of tricky. So I
Yeah.
get it, I get it. So the brand awareness, but the indicator that the brand is good and it's working is when people show up at the event that you do, right?
True.
Great.
Yeah.
We do similar things. Like for example, now in October we have 5 events in Poland, and majority on SaaS. So for example, that's also an indicator for us. We do an event at Google Campus, Google for Startups, and if people show up and write ICP, of course, then we know, okay, it's it's a good indicator. Obviously,
Yeah.
because of RevOps and the nature of the company, we are geeks about, getting the metrics out of it, and
Yeah.
really understanding what drives the growth, or because that's the nature of how we run and how SaaS
Right.
runs, right? Cool. So now let's go a little bit, and I want to go back also in time, because you told me before that you lived in 11 different countries, you travel all around, you are in Vietnam now, or you worked or lived in 11 different countries, which is
I think
wow.
it's 10.
10. Okay, maybe your like native country can be considered the 11 one.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in understanding a bit current situations of how you see the market today, after one, that you have a lot of family members in your tribe, plus you have all these podcast sessions. What has changed in 2024, 2023, compared to those growth at all times that we had before? Like what's is top of mind for a company like in SaaS group, or even your guests today?
Well, I think you're right. First of all, right, growth at all costs, no longer possible. I mean, still, everyone wants some quick wins, right? And everyone wants to get early adopters, but there are just less and less of them. And also, I feel like customer expectations are so much different right now that it's no longer possible just to, especially like for the new tools, to just go to market and find whatever, like the first thousand of customers. I feel like, you know I used to go to Product Hunt to check for like some cool tools there, and
Mm-hmm.
I even found a couple. Like I'm super proud to be unofficial ambassador of Beams, um,
Oh.
which is like a super cool, teeny tiny productivity tool. Um, but now, more and more, I go to Product Hunt, and it reminds me of that. Have you watched like Red Bull has those competitions where you have to make a plane out of just all the crap laying around
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
see
yeah.
who flies the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
longest?
In workshops they do that, yeah,
That's how
training.
it looks like. Like seriously,
Yeah.
it's like, what is it? Anyway, so um,
Makes sense.
um, but yeah, what I was talking about, growth at all costs, right? So first of all, I mean, economical situation not the best, right? Still, companies are stalling, not really ready to buy anything new or to switch. Even though, like, I've seen a few research papers where it says, it actually makes sense for so many companies, and would eventually save you a ton of money. But first, it's you have to consider the fact that you have to still be then and there for the company to pick your product and to switch from their existing solution. And second, for the person that makes that decision, I feel like there is an added risk of, like, what if it doesn't work out? Then I spent all this money, and how am I going to justify it for, the person next in line, right?
Mm.
So I think that adds to the difficulty of selling right now. And also, I mean, the competition is super fierce, right? The market saturation is just incredible to see. I had a conversation with founder of Type.ai. They're a writing tool,
Mm.
and I did my research before we went on the podcast, and I think I typed on Google something like AI for writers or the best AI for
Mm-hmm.
like writing content. And if I'm not mistaken, they were on like page 16 or 17. So like, how do you stand out? How do you work in this kind of competition um, when you're on page 16? Um, so yeah, I think a lot of founders are trying to find the way um, to niche down a little bit, to really find where they bring the most value.
Hmm.
uh, and then, yeah, obviously everyone wants to still find a good hack and like get their small win. I feel like there was a lot of buzz with social listening, right? And we at SaaS.group also adopted, and I think it's great for those like small things, but it's really I think now a trend to find the value, build your brand awareness, to really know what your customers want, create great customer experience, and really work on retaining your people. Because, yeah, I mean, we don't have infinite number of new adopters of your SaaS product. So you either have to really love and retain those ones that you have, or you have to somehow win the customers that are not that happy with their existing product. So I feel like that's been,
Yeah, I think now that you were saying this, I just went on Ahrefs and I checked the organic keywords of type.ai. You said, right?
yeah.
And exactly what you said, like you need to niche down, and this shows that if you have things like even let me share the screen, make it a little bit fun. So even if you put position 1 to 3, right, like you need to go on niches like AI document editor, right, or you
That's what they did.
that
Yeah.
has like only 150 um, as volume, but it's keyword difficulty 0. Or you go AI word document generator, or I saw here TikTok script template, right? Like there are
Hmm.
6 positions, only 30. So I think this is key for most of those times when we were mm, trying to rank on everything and on these keywords. In their case, like
Hmm.
AI writer, as like extremely hard. So what this is what we see also with our companies, that trying to niche down. Like
Hmm.
you have in your in your family, like scrape.ai, a
Scraper.
uh, scraper API,
API.
I
Yeah.
think, right? So that's like a super good niche, because then you
Yeah.
can just create some very good use cases and go after that. You have also this Epify or whatever competition, but the fact that you create some use cases that
Hmm.
helps you niche down. But if you go on very broad, like
Yeah.
it's like if somebody comes up with a CRM now, it will be good luck, right? But if they do CRM for, I don't know, um, restaurants or chefs, okay, that's a little bit niche down, and then you can create use cases around that. So when we
Absolutely.
talk about the podcast, like because you talk with all these folks, what is the main topic of discussions that these people have in mind? Like what are those things that you hear again and again and again? I just want to deconstruct and understand why in certain times there is a particular trend or a particular discussion, as you mentioned, like social
Yeah.
selling, it was, or social listening. Yeah, like all this was huge buzz. Now it's AI writing or Clay
Yeah.
coming in with all kind of APIs and connections. Before it was SEO and organic. So what's that topic that you hear over and over again?
I mean, good question. It was I started to realize that there were a few waves of really like recurring topics.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we were coming out of winter, I guess winter was really brutal for everybody. We had a lot of discussions about founders' mental health and like
Oh
how
wow.
to be. Everyone was battling with recession, and because oftentimes you talk to like bootstrappers, there's a very lean teams, or even a solo founder. Those are like really challenging times for them. So we talked about like of community, and the importance of really finding people that you can talk to, and finding your mentors and stuff like that. Then at one point, a bit earlier, I think mm, last fall, we started talking about AI more. And there were quite a few like very interesting points shared. Like some people really jumped on it, and they were like, yeah, that's the next big thing. We want AI everywhere, and we don't really care what cost it is, and everyone's asking about it, so we want to be the pioneers. And there were others, like, I don't know, Jason Fried came to the podcast, and he was like, you know what, I don't care, I'm going to just stand back and look. And you can do it, and you can jump around and experiment. And then if I see value for, you know, for what I'm doing or for my customers, then maybe I will experiment with that. So that was really interesting. And I think now all the talk is sustainable growth. Like everything is back to profitability. I mean, I don't know, even a year ago, I don't think any founder would talk about a rule of 40. We would be kind of like the only nerds. Dirk Salmer, our head of origination, would be like grinding on LinkedIn about rule of 40 and the importance of it, and how it should be really a balance between your growth and profitability. And now I think the latest 10-20 podcasts, founders mentioned that as well. They start looking into this, they start really looking into it as a health metric, understanding where they stand, and where they should optimize. So yeah, I think that's the biggest kind of trend lately.
So how is it with investors for SaaS group, or is it like are there is there someone investing in these companies to grow, or it's not VC related at all?
No, no. So first two companies were actually, so there are three partners at SaaS Group, right? Tim, Toby, and
Mm-hmm.
Ulrich. And Tim was kind of the original founder of SaaS Group. He had his own exit, and he used the money from his exit to buy the first two companies. And then it grew out of it, and then we added two more founders, and I like to call it we're a bootstrapped holding. But I mean, it's not entirely true, right? We have debt financing now, and we're obviously growing, right? We want to optimize and make sure we have the cash at hand when the new company comes um, for an acquisition. But no, we do not actively search for investors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this changes a little bit the stress level for those portfolio companies, right? Do you agree with that? Like the fact that so the stress level comes because there is this pressure from the investors of growth, while and because the partners, a SaaS group being, it's in one tribe, they know
Mhm.
constant. like continuously what's happening in these companies, the challenges, or rather you try to solve it as a tribe versus, hey, we invested, now we need the ROI from
Right.
it ASAP. And obviously they also need ROI. It's not like flower power, but I just want to understand uh, if this actually helps I'm just wondering, does this help the companies grow faster, or how's growth seen in such environment? This is what I'm trying to understand, where
Right.
you
Well,
don't have the pressure, right? It's like
yeah. So, like I said, we're in for, sustainable growth has been our kind of vision and mission from the
mm-hmm,
very beginning. We bought these sustainable companies, we bought to hold them and to grow them indefinitely. Like the big vision is to become this biggest holding of SaaS companies in the world, right? And we do not intend to flip them and sell them. So we're not really going after like hyper growth.
mm-hmm,
And like I said, I think the advantage that we have right now is obviously just shared knowledge, like what worked for you guys, what worked for you. And
mm-hmm,
um, obviously we have a ton of like experts in-house in those brands. We have a very big central team where we just take those people who can help with SEO, for example, or PPC, or whatever a brand needs, and make sure that they can double down their efforts there. So yeah, I feel like it's easier for brands to experiment, just again having that support. But yeah, it's definitely not about hyper growth. I mean, obviously, like you said, we're all adults here, right? It's not just hobby. We're in for the money, right? So we want to grow the
yeah, yeah,
companies, and of course, all the founders know what this is about. But it's not just like, hey, guys, we're going to give you $1 million, and you have to spend it. Like I was just today, I was going through a list of your possible questions, and I started reminiscing about like what the talk was about between marketers like a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, when everyone was like, oh, our budget on marketing was like 16 million this year and we spent it all on advertising, and everyone was just like, yay guys, like that's what success looks like. And apparently not really, because a lot of those companies did not go anywhere. And now I feel like all the success is, hey, we added $16 million in ARR. So it's not about, we're more about profitability, maybe a bit less about growth.
mm-hmm. Got it. So guys, if you are a SaaS out there that cares about being part in such a family, contact Anna or go to SaaS.group.
Oh, yes.
Anna, I'm curious about ideas, right? Like you having a bunch of ideas surrounded by this SaaS and this podcast. You don't think of making your own SaaS, or you, because I'm just thinking being bombarded by so many ideas and products and all of that. I bet it's going through your head. And if you would have the, let's make a like small little game here. If you would have all the resources possible to bootstrap and SaaS, in what niche, and we don't you don't necessarily need to tell us what this SaaS would do. I'm just interested to know in what niche and why would you choose that niche.
Oh, good question. Definitely unexpected. Uh, and I mean, I'm gonna be very honest with you here. I don't think necessarily I'm the best person to just grow a SaaS. Grow a business, maybe. Grow a SaaS, not necessarily, because like you said, it is a lot about like metrics and tracking and really understanding like where like everything comes from. And like I shared before we started recording, I'm just super glad that at SaaS Group we have those wizards and exceptional experts that take this over. I'm not the person to do that. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just not the person to do business at all. I'm very comfortable with, just experimenting a little bit.
Okay, I will rephrase the question or flip the question.
Yes.
What niche you think might it's in a need of SaaS, or what problem? Maybe you will not do it, but like um, for you talked about chef. For me, cooking and all the Horeca, I believe it's highly and also entertainment. It's neglected. I truly believe that everybody is focusing on the similar topics, AI and B2B and so on, while there is so much space in the local businesses,
Yeah.
entertainment, and Horeca. So I really believe that that's like if you think of Booksy, Booksy, it's you just need to schedule. You schedule all kind of hairdresser, nail
Okay.
salons, massage, whatever. So these guys made a big business, like huge business around this simple thing. They went to a bunch of local businesses and said, "Hey, Google Maps sucks. People cannot find you. The reviews and this that is really hard. People are on mobile. They have apps. For you to make an app, it's quite expensive. So we
Hmm.
have this app called Booksy where we add everyone. You can just select the location, and people they drive a lot of loyalty and returning customers because it's just three buttons away to book a hairdresser or a barber, right? I use it every 2 times a week. I go back to the same barber 2 times a week. He doesn't need, I don't need to call them. He doesn't need to talk to me. Everything happens through the app. Everybody's happy. And this company grew. This is a niche where people maybe looked away, right? Like, oh, fucking barbers. Why should I bother? But if we, so that's a niche. Yeah. This is,
Right.
this is, even though
So,
I am also like, maybe I don't know if I would be able to do a SaaS, right? But just I see that niche.
so I think you're right. There are a lot more over, like everyone wants the next big and shiny thing, and especially like being in that bubble. I'm a little bit, I think, blind to other opportunities in a way. I feel like, yeah, there could be niches that are overlooked, that are a bit more boring, that are a bit more like down to earth, and what we actually do use, but we just don't realize that they could be optimized. uh Maybe you mentioned entertainment. Yeah, maybe I would go with events. This is just something I'm super passionate about. We
Hmm.
started doing a lot more events lately with SaaS Group for SaaS founders. And yeah, if we could just, and I mean, there are so many, um even on my podcast, there were so many founders that are tackling one or the other problem in the event space. I think I would,
Hmm.
if I was to join a niche, I think that would be the one.
Like events, for I would be your client if you would
Yes.
do SaaS in that,
That's
because
validation right there.
one single problem: self check-in at events. No self checking at events. It's simple. Scan a QR code, send to the CRM event that this guy came to the event.
And then a
Right? No
print
more.
of the badge.
Right. Like I need to interact with people, right? Okay, I'm okay interacting with people, but then I go to Web Summit and it's like 3 kilometers of line to check in, like,
Yeah,
really? And I'm going to Web Summit, like a technology company,
true. Yeah.
technology conference, right? So I was just wondering about that. Now,
Okay. Did you
you
just
have
pitch
a
us
lot
an
of
idea? Something to
you
build the
travel
software.
you travel a lot with in the world, right? So
Yeah.
I'm also curious to see what SaaS companies, or what you see in one parts of the world that might not work in the other. I will give you an example. Also, with I lived in India and also traveled in there, and like there are a lot of companies that are building all kind of small little SaaS or apps that serve the, let's say, again, local businesses. But the fact that there are many people, and with different professions. So one of the profession, very easy in India, it's normal to use a cleaning service, right? But to even to wash your clothes, right? So these guys, they build single idea, simple, which I don't think in Europe would work, but for washing clothes. So you book the guy, he comes to your place, takes the clothes, you pay through the app, you review to the app. It's a network of only this idea, right? Like, and this is something that only in India would work, right? Or maybe I would rephrase, maybe it would not work in Europe, right? So I want to get out also these things from you, because I don't have that many hosts that travel so much. um I'm just curious.
Mm,
If there is nothing, it's fine. I'm just curious of if you see that from your conversations, or from uh
I'm trying to think
your
about. First of all, the moment about washing your clothes. There was a startup. I know at least one. No, I know two. In Norway. One was a little older. They were actually doing quite well when the next one popped up. It was 3 years ago. For the love of God, I cannot remember the names of either of them, but there were definitely tries to do something like this. I don't know how they were doing right now. Maybe they died. It was. I mean, it was around COVID, so everything was kind of like no
hmm
people. But we still need to wash our clothes. Maybe it's dead since you can go places now. But to your question about unusual startups,
because you were in China, right? Like 2 years you
I mean,
studied in China. That's another universe, I suppose, in terms of
yeah, but
SaaS.
I mean, China back then, interestingly enough, I think was so far ahead of anything else taxi app wise. It was crazy.
Like Grab,
Um,
or
yeah, I don't think it was Grab. I think it was something else, but it was just so easy. You could get a cab, like, I don't know, in a second. um, what else? Uh, I think here in Asia, um, they love those like super pumped super apps, like where it's everything,
like
right? So
WeChat, right?
WeChat, yes, there is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yalo here in Vietnam, which is also getting there. There is what Grab is also becoming like some kind of monster where you can get anything in the world. Um, so yeah, I think that's a very big difference. Banking apps. I mean, when are you guys in Europe going to get one decent banking app? It's ridiculous. Seriously, it's embarrassing. I don't know why. So
But
banking
what,
apps.
what what what's wrong with banking apps? Like, what you see better in Asia versus what we have here? I'm
it's
just
just
curious.
instant. You can get everything and anything. Everything is paid through a banking app, like all your utilities and bills and
Ah,
tips
okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
fines, and you can buy stuff and you can send your money just again instantly to your pal next to you, and it's not going there in 9 working days. It's just there in 9 seconds. So that's a bit different. Um,
Yeah, I think Europe is a little bit slow in doing such bold moves, mainly basically
yeah,
because of data privacy. But I'm
maybe.
I'm wondering now that we discuss about all this, the target group of these companies, even the SaaS group, is it Europe, or it's a huge focus on US? Because I have this feeling also that majority of the SaaS companies, like, barely you see one or two that don't target US, like they create something for. And if you don't target US, then in your VC, the VCs, they look at you a little bit like, why you don't target this big market, right? So
Do you mean
what's your take on that?
market that our companies target, or
Yeah, yeah,
market
yeah,
where we
exactly.
buy companies, or
No,
both?
necessarily where your companies, like portfolio companies, what is their target market?
Mm. So most of the companies that we buy, they have a global market,
Mm-hmm.
but we do we do have a few companies in our portfolio that are a bit more um, niche. I think we have a couple in France that are mostly just operating in French market. We
Mm-hmm.
bought recently a couple German companies that are just working in Germany, and there is a huge potential for us to take them to everywhere, everywhere else, and make them global. So that's what we like, like any other investor or acquirer. We like to buy companies where there is good growth, good profitability. I mean, they are attractive to us, but there is still something that we can add, and we see where we could be growing and where we could be adding value for them.
And in terms of go to market, or what works in one country versus the other, do you see some differences? I'm just wondering if there are some culture differences in terms of go to market. For example, events, right? Like in France, you have, I don't know, maybe it's this um, stereotype about French that, okay, they would go more for an event to network in a SaaS environment than, I don't know, uh, a Norwegian. I have no idea. I just said Norwegian randomly.
Mm.
Like,
I
do you
mean,
see some differences in this?
it would be easier to answer this question about Asian market, because I just worked a little
Asian
bit
one, yeah,
more
yeah, of course, of course,
in
of
Asia,
course.
but we don't have anyone here, so right, it wouldn't be relevant. I feel like it's just very different for each company. I mean, 22 companies in portfolio. Each one is very different from the other. If we're talking cultural differences, I mean, sure, like probably if we're tackling mm, bigger bigger clients, it's easier. And I'm just speaking from my experience. um, it's just easier if you're going after a client in Germany to communicate in German, and to actually show up and talk to them in person and stuff like that. And if you're in France, same thing. Um, and with if you're going to the US, then if you want this enterprise client, I think that just the like attention span that you have is way shorter. So you really have to get to the point and like
Mm-hmm.
present what you want to sell them and how it's going to help
Mm-hmm.
them,
That's a good
and
point.
have the numbers there.
Mm.
Whereas with French, you kind of have to establish the relationship a little bit before you tell them how much money you want to get.
Mm. So if let's say I have the agency and I want to go to Asia, right? Like I know
Mhm.
what I would need to do in Berlin or in other European, but I have absolutely no idea. And I really believe there is a huge market, for example, in Malaysia or Singapore, right?
Mhm.
That where it's English speaking, right?
Yeah.
So if for an agency, just picking your brain now and taking this advantage, uh, let's say Man Digital is an agency. It can be any other SaaS, right?
Mhm.
What one needs, or what would be the steps to penetrate a market like Malaysia or Singapore, because you also work there, right? I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
are the same steps, is the same rules apply, or there is some twist to it?
I mean, there. I feel like there is a twist, and it's very much more of a relationship based business here. So, like, if
Mm-hmm.
um again, like say in France, it would be enough for me to just be introduced by email to somebody that I want to do business with. In the US, cold emails work, or cold calling, because they really are there for for the result, and they don't really care if they know you or anybody you ever worked with. In Asia, it's better it's better to be introduced, but it's better to be introduced by a person that a company you want to work with also works with, trusts, has relationship with, because there is a lot more time that you have to allocate to make something happen.
Mm.
And it's very interesting what I notice here. You know how like in the US and in Europe, we want to show people that we like in a way that we are important, or that we can make decisions by how quickly we can make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
And in Asia, I feel like it's a bit different. It's you know how important the person is by how long they're making you wait.
Mm.
So they will eventually make it happen for you. If you have
Interesting.
a contract, if you have an agreement, it will happen. It will just happen on their terms. And you will have
Mm.
to wait just out of respect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Got
just
it.
been my experience. And it's just kind of like you have to adapt to this rules of their own game and never rush anything.
So a good idea would be partnerships, right? Because they already established the relationships, and
Yeah.
you can actually try to do one relationship well. Like if I'm an
Yeah.
agency with another agency, or if you're a SaaS with some integrators or some shoulder niche, right?
Yeah.
Got it. So that's interesting to understand also this culture differences, because maybe we are too close in our bubble of you know Western Europe and US, and we don't look there because maybe it's too hard for us to even try, right? Got it.
Maybe. It's
So
certainly
now,
interesting.
for sure, I'm sure. So what's next now for SaaS group in terms of GTMs? Like, what are those things that you bet on, just for people to understand what are something that they should try out in terms of go to market? Like you mentioned events.
Mm.
Um, Maybe you can elaborate on why events uh, and so on, and what other things are there.
Right. So, and again, 22 brands, right? Events not for everybody.
Mm,
Not all of our brands go somewhere. Sometimes it's just, it doesn't make sense. Sometimes they tried it and it didn't work. We're super open to experiments. Events are mostly, my go-to market, right? As a company that uh, I like to say SaaS Group is SaaS Group doesn't have to show off, but we have to show up, right? We may not have like the fanciest website out there. We may not have the fancy office or anything like that. We're all remote, but we have to show up. We have to show founders that we're interested, that we're ready to make decisions, that we think they're important enough that we go to them or we invite them to our events, because it's, I'm also selling this idea. I'm also our, product in a way, right? It's SaaS Group, this big acquisition, often once in a lifetime thing, that you have to uh, get ready for, and it's a stressful process. I mean, we try to, of course, like streamline it and make it as stress free and easy for founders and teams as possible, but it's still giving up your baby, giving up your, something that you worked for many years. So yeah, for me and for, for our origination team and for the partners, events are a great way to, yeah, to show up and to actually talk in person. Like I said, with any, big checks and getting enterprise clients, it's better if you go to the office and shake hands and really show who you are.
mm-hmm,
And for us, that works too, right? And we write pretty big checks for for every company.
mm-hmm,
So events have been going really well for our companies as well, and sometimes they just do it again, like out of curiosity, just to experiment if it's going to work or not. Like we have
mm-hmm,
this super cool SEO tool called Stability, and
mm-hmm,
they went to OMR Festival, and OMR is the biggest marketing conference in Europe. It's in Germany, in Hamburg, and it's this enormous thing. I think that like 75,000 people are there. I mean, this year Kim Kardashian, Tim Ferriss were there. So it's like it's ridiculously huge, and it's a lot of fun. Uh, which is why they were not sure if it's going to be good for them. Maybe, it's mostly for agencies, mostly for, really for like big marketing brands. But it worked magic. They closed a few deals and they really are looking forward to possibly participating next year. So you never know with events. I think whatever, like if you decide to go, you definitely have to come prepared. Um, because if you just think, hey, we're just going to talk to people and we're going to wing it, it doesn't always work. I would actually say it always doesn't work. So yeah, it's yeah, you have to decide like where you want to be and where you don't want to be as well, because maybe sometimes it's even more crucial for your success.
And for
Um,
example, with podcasts, you see that that's a like that's something every startup should have, or is the same like with
have
events?
a
Because
podcast?
this is, yeah, because everybody is so enthusiastic, and it's such a, everybody has a podcast, right?
Yes.
In all kind of businesses, and it's already buzz, right? So is that really a thing? Like, do we need all to have a podcast, or or if yes, in what cases we should even consider podcast, or in what case we should consider events, and in what case we should say, you know what, let's park it. This is not something we want to put time in, to
Right.
invest time in.
And I think that's a very good point to start with. Like, you have to realize how much time a podcast is, and I mean, probably me and you both know how big of a time investment it is. And like, literally for me, I think it's a good 40-50% of my time, because it's, it's getting the guests, it's doing research, it's scheduling, it's editing, then promoting, and all that. It's a ton of work, and I think a lot of people don't realize it, and I think that's why a lot of podcasts die, um, because you just cannot keep up the consistency. um, And I understand, like, sometimes if I miss a week of like going through inbound applications that I have for the podcast, or going after the guests that I really want to get, uh, I sometimes, find myself with no episode. And I'm like, oh shit, wait, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in my defense, we do a lot, right? We do 8 episodes per month, but still, it's a lot of work, even if you do four, even if you do two. um I definitely don't think everyone should have a podcast. I do think, though, everyone should go to a podcast, because it's
Mm-hmm.
just another piece of content that just sits there. You never know who will discover it, you never know how it's going to come back to you. I mean, I have founders just writing to me randomly from time to time saying, hey, you know what? We did that episode like 8 months ago. We still get people who listen to it, come and subscribe for our tool. And I'm like, okay, well, that's awesome, right? Um, so I think from the guest, it requires like very little effort. You just basically come and talk about things you talk about every day. And yeah, it's a good idea to do for everybody, I think. Um,
Why
when you
should not,
should,
like
yeah,
you said, sorry, you said that not everybody should have a podcast. Like, can you
yeah,
tell us why?
yes. Because, yeah, first of all, it's hard to keep up. It's a very, very easy road to burn out if you put too much thought into it, but cannot put enough work, enough hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's If you're outsourcing, let's say you're only doing this, right? Only the conversation, but there is someone looking for guests for you, someone editing, someone doing the publishing and promoting. It's expensive, so sometimes you underestimate how much actually like cash you need to have to produce a podcast. And fourth, let's be very, very honest with each other, right? It is, again, very saturated, and a lot of people have podcasts, and sometimes you just have no knack for it. There is no value from the podcast to both
I mean, you want to
sides.
be politically correct, but basically you suck at the mic. I mean, you
Right.
don't know how to put questions, how to connect with people,
Right. And
and it's fine because some people have it and some people don't. So yeah.
sure, and you can like unsuck in some time, but if you suck for a while, then you're, again, it's a road to burnout, and to question yourself, and why would you put yourself through this? And if it doesn't add anything to your business, if you're doing it for the business, again, like, why do this? Find something else. There are so many opportunities out there. I mean,
So what if I hire someone? I suck at podcasts and I hire someone that
to do a podcast for
hosts
you.
this. Yeah, I mean, I see businesses doing that. Like I see that, especially like big, like corporations. Even I see, or
Hmm.
bigger organizations. Let's put it this way. Maybe not corporate, but solid companies. But they don't have someone that one can do it. Two, sometimes you have someone, but because it's a lot of time, you say, you know what, like I cannot dedicate the time to for this, right? Like I can make more money with some other things in the company. Like if you ask the CEO to do the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Even though we saw it, for example, a Drift with David Cancel, that was the CEO of Drift. I don't know if people remember Drift still, but it's that podcast with David Gerhardt was like amazing because David could put him on the desk and actually, and he's amazing as a speaker, David Cancel, but David knew how to take out all these things, right? Like he organized the topics, the bullet points, and then they did that podcast. But and he, like David Cancel admitted that he would not be able to do this without David because yeah, it was like hard. So, what's your take on that? Like hiring a host, like is that something um, you would do, or it's like maybe it's ruining your brand, or it's not aligned to your brand? Because that's another uh, aspect to it.
I mean, if we're talking like hiring somebody who does another podcast to, or two other podcasts to do a podcast for me, I don't know. I probably wouldn't go for it because, again, you're building a brand, and that person, in a way, becomes the face of your company or the voice of your company or whatever format you choose. And I don't know. I think it really depends on like what you're trying to get there. Because, like, again, only from my perspective, both podcasts I did, and I did the first one for another company, for a tech startup I was working for um, a couple of years ago. Both roles indicated that, I was that person that people could later, after the podcast, come and talk to, and I could actually like make something happen to for them, right? For the tech startup, I could, I don't know, partner with them if they thought we're a cool platform to partner with. At SaaS.group, they can reach out to me and say, hey, I heard this conversation with the founder, and you mentioned that, I never heard about SaaS.group, right? But you mentioned that SaaS.group acquires companies. Tell me more. Like, can I talk to you about this company that I'm selling? It's, I don't know. It Yeah, I need to think
Yeah. So
about
if the
it.
host is, yeah, if the this is what I'm learning here. If the company um, does the podcast so that the host connects and builds the network, and
Mm,
because the host builds the network, then the brand grows, right?
sure.
Like it's anchoring into that network, and you need that personal branding. Then yeah, do a podcast.
Hmm.
um, but if your company, it's big enough, right, and you do it for the brand, so I don't know, you are Disney, whatever. For sure, there are people at Disney doing good podcasts. Whatever, the Vietnam version of Disney that wants to penetrate Malaysian market, right? Obviously, they will hire someone from Malaysia, famous, to do the podcast for them because the branding of anchoring that brand of Malaysian famous person will help Vietnam Disney version grow, right?
Yeah.
The brand in Malaysia, if that makes sense, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in this case, maybe
Yeah. Again,
maybe
I'm just
we
talking
could
from,
use.
the point of view of smaller brands, where, yeah, your network is kind of the company's network. And I mean, in a way, like I was hired to be the podcast host, right? When I was hired, my only kind of requirement was to do a podcast. Everything else was
Mm-hmm.
just a blank page, do whatever. You were the head of growth, you figure it out. So, but the podcast is kind of like one thing, like the centerpiece of the strategy. So it just grew from there.
Yeah, so learning here is also that okay, you do the podcast, but then you transform that network into
Yeah,
business later on, right? Even though you don't have the
right.
KPIs necessarily, but you can see the interactions that you have and so on. And I suppose it's the same with events. What about outbound? Do you see that still a thing for for the SaaS company? They are still doing it, is still bringing results because there is this two let's say tribes like hey, let's go outbound, clay is the best, let's do it, yeah,
Yeah,
AI SDR, it's a new thing, versus guys, let's produce content, let's do inbound, let's do podcasts, let's do events, fuck outbound. Or it's like let's do them all, of course let's do them all with the right
yeah,
resources, but I'm talking our size.
true. And again, taking SaaS Group as a brand, we do both. There are like
Mm-hmm.
basically two of us mainly. There's me with inbound, producing content, yeah, talking to our audience, and there's our team in the origination where they do mostly outbound, and they're doing a hell of a job. And they're like they're talking to so many people, it's crazy. For our brands, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're mostly POG, so we try to make sure it's as low touch as possible. So it's
Mm.
self-service. We don't have to add salespeople. We don't have to, add this motion at all. But that said, of course, again, we also want sometimes bigger clients, and sometimes we start working with um, bigger enterprise customers. And there are, I think, a couple of brands that we have that are mostly working with outbound. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's mix and match. Like you said, it's a lot of experimenting, but in no way we're like actively adding sales motion to our PLG companies because they're growing organically pretty well.
Okay, so SEO it's a top,
Yeah.
let's
SEO
say.
content, yeah, like founder branding, social media, all that, but yeah, not much of outbound.
Got it. Great. I love talking to you, and I know that I could go on and
Thanks.
on to geek
Okay.
about all these things. Um, what is the one thing that you learned lately in like professionally that you would recommend also the listener to dive deeper into? This can be, from book, from podcasts that you listen to, maybe some guests that you interviewed, something that you were like that aha moment, yeah, that say,
Mm.
okay, I need to tell this thing to more people, and they should be more, um, you know, like to drive some curiosity in that topic. Think about
Oh,
it.
interesting
We there is no
question.
rush.
Well, first of all, again, something that I realized very recently, and I realized it because one of my friends, she got an acquisition offer for her company, and she texted me and asked me for advice. She was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, I can't share much, but like this is the deal, and like this is what they offer, and stuff like that." And I actually went on a call with her for like 40 minutes just laying down everything that I knew, and like all the, all the red flags and everything to look out for and all that stuff. Uh, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to connect you with a lawyer that will be so much better at this. And like, he will give you a piece of advice that will actually work. Uh, and I talked to him, and I obviously explained what I told her. And he backed me up. He was like, okay, that was like a solid plan. And I realized that 18 months ago, when I was getting hired, I when when the founder like gave me a pitch about SaaS.group, he was like, "Yeah, we do M&A for SaaS companies." And after the call, and I of course like nodded and said, "Okay, that's exciting. Yes, that's really cool." After the call, I went to Google and Googled M&A, and 18 months later, I'm giving consultations to people who are selling their companies, which is wild.
Wow. Wow.
Um, but
Congrats.
thanks. I mean, it was such a like big win for me. Um, because like the imposter syndrome was of course there, and that's why the call with the lawyer came later, but it was really cool. Anyway, it was just something I wanted to share. I'm very proud of, but I think it's just the book that's just looking at me right here, and I picked it up, and it's not new. I think I read it before. I don't know. Anyway, I picked it up because it's nothing like revolutionary or anything. And I mean, I've been, like you said, I've been traveling for the last 14 years. So I should know a thing or two about it. It's called Culture Map. It's about
Mm-hmm.
cross cultural communication. Uh, it's just something that I think as a frequent traveler and like working at this huge company where we have people in 35 countries speaking like 50 different languages, forget about is to like consciously think about their point of view and where they're coming from, and putting everything in context of how they communicate with me and like where their decision can be coming from. And we have this awesome page in Notion where you can write your own like manual in a way where you tell people how to work with you, and like what you like at the workplace and what you don't like, and how you like people to talk to you and how you don't, and what disappoints you and stuff. And while I'm reading this book, I'm coming back sometimes to that page in Notion and trying to compare, because there are like little graphs there in the book for different nationalities and different cultures, and I'm comparing it to different people from the team, and it's so much fun. Anyway, I think it's just
Wow.
about,
Love it.
like I said, not revolutionary, but just something that you never really consciously think about, and maybe we should.
Look at this. Um, Regarding this, I made this guide exactly on this
Oh,
topic. So for the guys who cannot see, it's like the guide to understand Romeo. So I put here my Enneagram personality test. I put here my Kobe test. So Kobe is the modus operandum. So this is more like personality and modus operandum. And then I put my culture fit profile that is done. Like and this is from Dave Gerhardt. I
hmm.
didn't invent this. I just maybe did it, pimped it a little bit. So I put some stuff about me in where I was in my last job, my marketing principles, my sales principles, teams principles, how I communicate, how I give feedback, what do I expect, what people I've
Yeah.
worked with say about me, what they hate about me, what they like about me, and what books do I recommend and stuff. I think this is so important to communicate who we are, because so many misunderstandings happen because the other person doesn't have any clue
Yeah.
about our expectations, right? But this expectation can be like natural for us, right? Like it's like, I have a friend Boris who stays actually in Vietnam, in Nha Trang. For him, being on time maybe 1 minute earlier is extremely important, like extremely. Me coming from Romania, Transylvania, where it's chill out atmosphere, if we meet for a party, who cares if I come at 9 or 9:30 or 10? It's a party. It's like people chill out at parties. If it's meeting, okay, I come at time. But for a party, why should I? But no, Boris needs to be at 9 there at the party if the party starts at 9, right? So
Yeah.
these are some things that I love it. So the culture map by Erin Mayer. Yeah,
Mayor.
I,
Yeah.
Mayer. Great. So thanks a lot for sharing all this.
Sure.
And who do you think we should invite next at the podcast? Like any recommendations? Like what pops in your mind? I said, okay, you need to
Who are
talk
you
about.
looking for? Like 200 names pop up in my head.
So this podcast is mainly focusing on RevOps. Sometimes we put in, SaaS and growth leaders that are not that geeks about metrics, just to soften a little bit the episodes, because it's too much of a. For sure, we want more female guests, for sure.
Okay.
So without discriminating to white folks out there or folks in general, we need more diversity.
Okay. I got a perfect guess for you. It's Mikael Dia from Funalytics. We had a podcast with
Mm-hmm.
him just recently. Great guy, super geek. Like, if you want geek, that's the guy to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Cool product, really cool story. So I think, yeah, I think you would hit it off
Perfect. If you can make us an intro, that would be great.
anytime.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for joining and tuning in from the comfort of your home, maybe driving in a car or maybe working in a co-working and listening to us. We highly appreciate you reach this stage. Not many do. Thanks a lot again, Anna. Which
Sure.
podcast we should follow for next episode for the listeners?
What you mean?
What's the name of the podcast?
Okay, it's SaaS.unbound.
SaaS.unbound. Perfect. We will find it on
That's the one.
Spotify,
Perfect.
Apple, all of that. Great. Thanks a lot, Anna.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your time. It was a blast.
Thanks, guys.